Natalie didn't adopt Atlas. Atlas adopted Natalie. He just let her believe otherwise for about the first 2 weeks. He is sitting on the kitchen counter right now, watching the street through the window with the focused stillness of someone who is assigned to monitor the situation and takes the assignment seriously. He weighs 20 pounds. His fur is dark gray, almost black, long and layered the way old forests look, dense and slightly wild and entirely his own. His eyes are amber, and they catch light from angles that don't quite make sense, like he's always lit from somewhere you can't locate. He is a Maine Coon, which the vet explained is less a breed and more a category of animal that happens to share certain physical characteristics with domestic cats while operating on a fundamentally different frequency. Natalie had not planned on a cat. She had not planned on a lot of things. Atlas arrived that same night in a borrowed carrier, stepped out onto Natalie's kitchen floor, looked around the apartment once with the systematic attention of a property manager doing an inspection, and then walked directly to the bedroom. Natalie had set up a bed for him near the radiator in the living room. By the second night, it was untouched. She found him at the foot of her bed, occupying more space than his size should have allowed, arranged with the settled permanence of something that had always been there. She moved him back to the living room. He returned in 9 minutes. She moved him again. He returned in 6 minutes and sat on the floor beside the bed and looked at her in the dark with the patient certainty of someone who understood that one of them was going to give in and had already decided it wasn't going to be him. She stopped moving him after that. The apartment was different after that, not in any way she could have named out loud if someone had asked her to, just different the way a room is different when something has shifted in it that you weren't watching directly. Atlas didn't fill the space the way a person would have. He filled it the way a weight fills a pocket. You don't notice it's there until you notice how strange it felt before. Within 3 weeks, she was sleeping through the night. She didn't register it as a change at first. She just woke up one morning and realized the glass of water on the nightstand was still full, which meant she hadn't been sitting up in the dark drinking it at 3 a.m. the way she had been for years. She thought it was a coincidence. Then it happened again and again. She had stopped taking melatonin without making a decision to. She was waking up at 6:30 feeling like the night had actually been a night. She mentioned it to her friend Rachel over lunch. Rachel asked what was different. Natalie thought about it and said, "I think it's Atlas." Rachel looked at her the way people look when they're deciding whether to say the thing they're thinking. "Does he do anything specific?" Rachel asked. Natalie said, "That's the part I can't figure out." She was 31 and had been a bad sleeper since her mid-20s. Not dramatically bad, not the kind of bad that gets written about, just the quiet, grinding kind. Waking at 2 a.m. for no particular reason, lying still in the dark, mind assembling a list of things she hadn't resolved and couldn't resolve at 2 a.m. and knew she couldn't resolve but assembled anyway. She had tried melatonin, then a different melatonin, then magnesium, then a sleep mask, then a white noise machine that she eventually unplugged because it made the apartment feel like the inside of an airplane. Nothing worked. She moved through mornings in a half state, functional but muffled, like a radio tuned slightly off the station. Atlas arrived because of Marcus. Marcus had found him, or Atlas had found Marcus, depending on how you read the situation, sitting outside a convenience store on a Wednesday night, enormous and entirely unbothered, like he had an appointment there and was simply waiting for it to begin. He had already a strict no-pets lease and a landlord who checked. He called Natalie at 9 p.m. and asked if she could take a cat temporarily. She said yes before he finished the sentence. She set up the camera on a Friday, propped it on the dresser, angled at the bed, watched the footage Saturday morning over coffee, still in yesterday's sweater. 12:02 a.m. Atlas lifted his head from the foot of the bed, looked at Natalie for a long moment, then stood and stretched from nose to tail with the unhurried deliberateness of someone clocking in for a shift they've been doing long enough to have a rhythm. He walked the full length of the mattress, pressed himself against her back, his chin at her shoulder. His eyes were open. He was not sleeping. He watched the bedroom door, the hallway, the window, back to the door, slow, methodical, completely awake, while Natalie slept without moving, her breathing steady and even beneath his chin. 21 minutes later, he walked back to the foot of the bed, circled twice, and lay down. Natalie set down her coffee. She watched it again, then again. She pulled up the previous night, 12:01 a.m., same walk, same position, same unhurried surveillance before he returned to his post. She went back as far as the footage allowed, 10 days, and found the same sequence every single night, never more than 6 minutes from midnight, always the same route, always the same stillness against her back, always watching before he returned. He had been doing this since the second week. She had slept through every single one. She called Rachel and described what she'd seen. Rachel was quiet for longer than felt comfortable. Then she said, "Natalie, he's keeping watch." Natalie said, "He's a cat." Rachel said, "He's a Maine Coon. That's not the same category." Natalie started to say something and then looked at the footage instead. Atlas at 12:02 a.m., eyes open, chin on her shoulder, watching the room with the patient authority of something that had decided, somewhere between the convenience store and the foot of her bed, that this was where it was supposed to be and this was what it was supposed to do. She had not slept reliably in 5 years. He fixed it in 3 weeks, alone, in the dark, at midnight, without being asked, without explaining himself, without waiting to be thanked. Atlas is still here. He has never once used the living room bed. He still makes his rounds every night, same route, same timing. Some nights, Natalie wakes up just enough to feel the familiar weight settle against her back and his chin find her shoulder, and she doesn't open her eyes. She just lies still and lets him do what he decided was his job on night 3 in an apartment he was only supposed to be in temporarily. She never found out where he was before the convenience store. She stopped trying to. It doesn't matter where he came from. It only matters where he decided to stay. And why? Some things don't arrive looking for a home. They arrive because they've already chosen one. Would you have kept him or would you have given him away? Tell me in the comments.